Today, Western Europe is home to roughly 15 million Muslims. This map highlights their distribution across key nations, showing how Islam has become the region's largest minority religion. But for decades, post-war governments operated under what was called the myth of return. They viewed these incoming populations strictly as temporary workers who would eventually pack up and leave. Because the state assumed laborers were just passing through, governments built zero infrastructure for Islamic worship. Mosques were pushed out of the public square and into unregulated basements, garages, and backyards. Nature abhors a vacuum, and foreign nations eagerly stepped in to fill it. Countries like Turkey and Saudi Arabia exported and paid the salaries of imams who possessed absolutely no connection to European culture. By refusing to integrate its labor force, the state inadvertently engineered a fragmented religious landscape within its own borders, controlled almost entirely from abroad. That status quo shattered following the mass casualty transit bombings in Madrid in 2004 and London a year later. Almost overnight, the entire European Islamic population was reframed. Governments suddenly viewed these local communities through the urgent lens of national security and terrorism. This triggered an immediate political backlash. In 2004, French President Jacques Chirac successfully pushed through a law prohibiting girls from wearing Muslim headscarves in schools. Restrictive policies like these bred deep cultural alienation, which in turn sparked a fierce counter-mobilization among European-born Muslims demanding their civil rights. The state's sudden terror fears had collided directly with rising xenophobia, forcing an unsustainable culture war. The government needed an entirely new approach to maintain order. While politicians were busy blaming religion for the unrest, top security chiefs recognized a reality: you cannot simply arrest your way out of radicalization. Law enforcement established a new imperative. To protect the public, the state had to actively work to separate violent extremists from the mainstream faith. But police were up against the unregulated vacuum created decades earlier. Extremist clerics were operating freely, effectively hijacking local community centers to recruit vulnerable youth. Intelligence agencies shifted their focus from pure surveillance to community prevention. Initiatives like the Preventing Extremism Together report elevated Muslim civic leaders, turning them into active partners in counterterrorism. Ironically, the very agencies tasked with domestic security became the loudest voices advocating for the social and political recognition of Muslim communities. To separate extremists from the faith, security agencies demanded a structural solution, establish local accreditation boards for mosques, and train imams at European universities. Despite massive political resistance, counterterrorism provided a workaround. On one side, the state-funded infrastructure of Christian churches. On the other, the hidden network of Islamic backyard mosques. Security mandates acted as a bridge, funneling resources and accreditation directly into these isolated networks to legitimize them. The ultimate objective was to cut reliance on foreign nations entirely, paving the way for a self-sustaining, authentically European version of Islam. The defensive fight against terrorism became the crowbar that forced European states to structurally integrate Islam into their national fabric. But relying on a state-sponsored, mosque-centric integration plan has a critical blind spot. The operational habits of extremists have already evolved. Modern radicalization rarely happens under the watch of mosque clerics. It occurs in private homes, through online videos, and peer bonding over shared grievances. By focusing so heavily on religion, counterterrorism policy ignores the actual drivers of alienation. Millions of residents face restrictive citizenship laws, profound poverty, and heavy geographic segregation. When a government treats a demographic purely as a security problem while ignoring socioeconomic deprivation, the result is explosive. We saw exactly this during the weeks of violent riots across the Paris suburbs in the fall of 2005. National security concerns forced Europe to finally take Islamic integration seriously. But lasting peace will not come from policing a religion. It will only arrive when citizens are granted